For those of you who don't know, the Deviant is the mono-metal version of the Outlier 2. It's going to be dropping for 45 USD. Let's talk about it. Here's my one rule with making offset yo-yos. They have to be yo-yos that I can't quite find anywhere else. If there was a yo-yo that made this shape just as well as I would have made it, I would have just tried to get sponsored by that company. The only issue was that I was pedantic about how I wanted that yo-yo to play. I don't think there is any person on God's green earth who has thought about the triple cut yo-yo design more than I have. I have tried every single yo-yo that resembles the irony. Now, this isn't a video about me razzing on other yo-yo companies. Those other yo-yos, they're great. They're great for other people, they're great for whatever reason. If it's gonna be my competition yo-yo, and there is something that is a millimeter off, that is unacceptable. So this isn't law or anything, this is all my opinion, but every single yo-yo that was similar to the irony on the market fell short in critical ways. So the gradient, they don't make it anymore. Way too much center weight, not enough spin time, yo-yo lacks stability. Okay, Banshee. Again, this is kind of similar to the irony, right? There's a Banshee, there's an irony. They're kind of similar, right? Why don't I like the Banshee as much as the irony? First reason is weight distribution. It's a little different. Diameter, it's a little bit smaller than the irony, so I find it a little bit less catchable. It's slightly more narrow, and here's probably the main thing. I do a lot of horizontal yo-yo tricks, so I don't want any wall on this yo-yo. And as you can see here, the Banshee, it has like probably a 2 to 3 millimeter wall. Some people love it, I personally hate it, but for that reason, it just renders the Banshee not quite suitable as a replacement for the irony. Very, very similar thing with the Banshee SS. So same thing because they have very, very similar shapes. Same critiques would apply there. Passer, this is a Corco yo-yo. There used to be a bunch of Corco people that were on Team Werrd, so they were familiar with the design as well. Again, very, very similar with the irony shape, as you can see there. But one major difference, the weight distribution, it feels a little off, doesn't feel quite right. And there's something about this yo-yo, I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's the diameter, I'm not sure, but it lacks catchability. And again, it still has a bit of a wall there, so I'm not too stoked on this design. There was a bimetal version released of this that has the exact same specs, and I assume that that also has similar catchability issues, although I haven't actually tried that. Another yo-yo that's very, very similar is the Meerkat, Betty Gallegos' signature yo-yo. That's close, but there's something weird about it. I'm not sure what it is. Their spin time bombs when it's playing horizontal. I'm not sure why that happens. That renders that yo-yo completely out of the cards for my signature yo-yo. What I wanted was an irony that was slightly wider, slightly more durable than the original irony. Kind of like, think of it as like if there's like the shutter and then there's the shutter wide angle. I wanted the irony wide angle, except no one was getting it right. It was at this point, I teamed up with Nick to make Offset Yo-Yo, to make the yo-yo I actually wanted, and there was also a learning curve there. Just because I knew what I wanted didn't mean I had the technical chops to execute on that. So it took us years to the point where we got to the Outlier 2, which I believe is an evolution of an irony. So it's different to the irony. I think this is better than the irony. But then when we had to go revisit the monometal shape, we had a few issues. Okay, brief history lesson for you guys. This is the Irony JP. This is the first yo-yo I ever won a yo-yo contest with. This was a pretty solid yo-yo. This was the design that Vu and I fell in love with, and this was the design that we would use to compete for the next 4 to 5 years. Ushering in the Deviant. And this yo-yo was pretty solid, but it had harmonic vibe. It was very difficult to play with. It was okay, but it lacked rim weight, so we decided to shelve this idea. Then what we decided to do was we decided to just replicate the Outlier 2 design in a monometal version. Easy enough. This thing was gonna crush it, right? Wrong. I'm gonna be frank, this yo-yo kind of sucked. The weight distribution was really, really off. It played unstable and it played slow and sluggish. Why did this fail? Because the Outlier 2, this is a really solid yo-yo. It hits all the perfect marks. Why didn't this succeed? And the answer is to do with the rim weight. Look at all of these other yo-yos, okay? There's one thing in common. They don't have that massive rim weight that the Irony JP had. Now, it's worth mentioning that even Stu thought that amount of rim weight was a little bit too extreme, so he eventually toned the design down in previous years, making slightly less rim weight, having the little indent, the cuts there, so there'll be slightly less weight on the rims. But Vu and I were always of the opinion that these yo-yos didn't quite feel quite as snappy and quite as powerful. The JP 2012, this thing played like a Draupnir before the Draupnir even existed, and it played so with a mono metal design. And it was because of this huge ass weight ring right on the edge. So this is where we go to design number 2. Now, I remember when I was speaking to Jeff, he was like, dude, if you put on that much weight on the edge of the rim, it's not gonna work. And I was like, I know it's gonna work because I've seen it done before. In fact, what I want you to do is I want you to add even more rim weight. So as you can see here, the Deviant has even more absolute rim weight than the Irony. And the Deviant, that's them combined in a side profile shot. The Deviant is slightly wider. This is the prototype that we kind of messed up. The gap was too thin, so that was like a 4.3 millimeter gap. And this is what we came up with. So I'm gonna give you guys a closer look. There is next to no wall on the Yo-Yo whatsoever. Contrast that to the Irony. Even the Irony had some of a wall, and they had the kind of inner walls glossed, but like this one, zero. This is my signature yo-yo, not a single piece of wall on there. Inner ring is glossed very, very clearly to reduce friction. The Irony's inner walls there is like threading, okay? Now it's threading because the axle was too short. Like, as you can see there, the Irony ran stock with a 5mm axle, which is way too short. So again, I lengthened out the axle and now we have it like so. Now this design isn't perfect. There's a finalized design coming in the final run, but essentially all that is a widened gap, and we push the rim slightly back so that it would be even wider, and there we have it. So one other thing we changed is that this is made from 6061 aluminium, whereas the Irony was made from 7075 aluminium. In its day, the Irony retailed for about 100 USD, whereas the Deviant, this is going to be a budget price point. This is going to be at 45 USD. So I genuinely think that this is the best triple cut yo-yo shape on the market right now, especially at its price point. And that's not to knock any of the other yo-yos that are currently there, but like based on my opinions and based on what I know to be essential for long spinning times, optimal horizontal stability, speed, catchability. This is the most hyper optimized yo-yo that if I could have found one of these somewhere else, I would have just bought it and called it a day, but I couldn't. So yeah, that's why there's the Deviant.